This video will be the second part in modeling a character. So the first part we blocked out all of the major forms. In this video we're going to refine some of the forms, add like the fingers, the toes, the facial features, and any other kind of refined detail, maybe like where the clothing meets the body as well, to set up for the next step, which would be texturing. Okay, so we're going to work out the hands first. Let's move over to edit poly mode. And we do have the symmetry modifier on the character, so whatever happens on one side will happen to the other side. Even if you are doing an asymmetrical character, it's good to start out with symmetry for most of the body, and then you can go back and collapse the modifier stack over here when you are finished, and then go make adjustments to one side after you do that. Okay, so what we're going to do, make sure we just have these polygons selected on the hand, on the bottom as well. Well, let's turn off ignore backfacing as well, just to make sure. It's button right here, ignore backfacing. Okay, so I'm just going to start extruding the hand out, or the fingers from the hand. I can use extrude, and this first time I want to go ahead and just kind of make sure we clean up things as far as the shape of it. Just as we talked about with the hands, we want to do the same thing for the hands as what we did for the arms and the legs. The more you start off with a rounded form, the better you'll be with adjusting that form later. Okay, so I'm going to scale this down. The thumb piece isn't going to be that bad or that large. Make sure we got the right scale tool. There we go. Okay, so I can follow my image here if I'd like to, but this background image is really just mainly for a starting point for where the thumb's going to be. So maybe we can just fold that there. Let's make sure our coordinate system's set to local. And I can scale this out some. So I want to follow the same idea as I do with major joints when I have 3 to 4 extrusions or loops around where the joint is going to be. So we're going to have about 2 or 3, and even if this isn't going to follow the shape of the hand exactly, we want to get the form, and then we can always adjust that shape later. So maybe something like that is a little bit of that connective tissue that's going to be added as well, and all I can really do in a minute is just adjust these shapes here. Let's go ahead and extrude this out for the thumb. So I'm going to have one major joint. Let's call this the first joint here. We can always scale this back out. I'll go back and add another loop here as well. This one's going to be a little larger. So let's go back to perspective view. Just make sure this is, as it shows here, this really isn't going to be too good of a shape. So let's try to scale some of these out a little more. Adjust the shape of the outer pieces. I can always move back to this section. Try to scale this out as well. Whoops, lift off the back ones because we have ignore back facing on. Rotate these a little bit. Image plane went off there. Let's just go back to front view. There we go. Okay, so let's extrude this out for the bulb shape on the end. It is even a little wider there. And then we're going to scale this down on the end here. Maybe even add another one. There we go. And push that really close so it'll look like it is going to be a rounded form. So that's at least a good start. With that connective tissue, I can come back through. Let's turn all off, ignore back facing again, and just move some of these around a little more. We do want to try to get a nice curve or an arc, something like that. Okay, so the fingers can get a little difficult here, so we're going to plan these out as easily as we can, and we're going to do a couple more loops so that we can add some roundness to the fingers as well. So it's not just really flat cube shapes. So that is going to be kind of an issue with maybe the thumb as well. We can actually go through an edge mode and move this one out, this one back. So even if this isn't like a human character, we want to think about human anatomy and try to make things feel like they are correct with this alien character's anatomy. So what we'll do is add a loop down the middle. So let's go to the graphite modeling tools and the edit tool. Let's do swift loop. And this will even allow us to add some more definition on the chest. So I'm going to break that loop down there. So it goes down the finger. I'm going to do another one down this one. So this character only has 3 fingers, but if you would need 4 fingers, this also is a good start as well. So you can have these 2 polygons extruded out for 1 finger, and then there's 3 more for those sections as well. Let's go ahead and try to round this off a little bit so things aren't so crazy. This will be where the knuckles will be. These are going to be much larger fingers, but that's fine. Move some of these down some. You can always go back and like re-round off some of these shapes. Next side come up a little bit. That's at least a good start. Okay, so what we're going to do, since we have 4 shapes here, is just start extruding this out as well. So let's do, for this finger, extrude this out. And we want loops around the base knuckle as well. So we don't want this first one to be so crazy, but we do want to kind of scale this one in to allow room for the other finger to come through as well. Okay, so let's go look at the vertices. Let's try to round these off a little more. I can even go down here to the constraint sections and choose edge, so that way it won't go like crazily up high or low. So let's just move that in and then around. And what that does is it keeps this vertex on the edge. You see it's more of a snap option. But that'll allow me to round the shape off a little more. Let me go turn that back off so that my other tools, my other things isn't really going to snap as well. Okay, so I'm also going to go up here to realistic, turn off the shadows here again, underlining the shadows. Okay, so now I can come through, maybe even make this a little closer, add a little bit more room for another extrusion. We don't want to go too small. Maybe even grow this out again and scale this up a little bit. And then shrink that back down. Okay, so now we can use extrude or even bevel to pull out our major forms here. So that's at least 3 there. We can go back and add some more. So let's maybe pull that out about right there. Maybe do some scaling down some. This is where the knuckle's going to be. So this one's going to be as much. So we're going to add a couple loops around where this knuckle is going to be set up. Maybe it's a little larger, then the next one's a little smaller. I don't have the knuckles really drawn out on my concept view, but this will definitely help it feel more natural with a couple more knuckles on there. Okay, so now we're going to come down and we're going to add the section for the bulbous part at the end. Rotate a little bit. Yeah, maybe not too much. So this section is going to be wider. This will also be where the knuckle will bend, so I even add some more loops to this later. This is even bigger. And then now we're going to scale it down. Let's do one more like we did up here. Much closer. Oop. Zoom back in. Let's scale that one down. There we go. So that's good. Okay, so I can actually just repeat that same process for the other finger. Or what I can do is copy these polygons for this finger, since the other finger is really close to the shape, maybe just a little smaller, and I can paste that in here. I'm not really doing copy and paste, but I'm going to shift copy or clone the polygons for this finger over here. What I need to do before that is delete any of these polygons right here, because I can't actually weld the second finger to polygons that are already there. I have to have a hole or a border there. So let's just delete those polygons. I'm going to keep the same loops around. But now what I can do is roll through here and select my finger. Maybe before I do that, let's go in here and try to relax some of these polygons some. So that'll round off this shape. This is under geometry, relax. That does a really good job of rounding and easing off hard shapes, but the issue is it does scale it in. So let's do that one more time. So it does a pretty decent job. I don't want to fan it out too much, but then let's scale this in, but then kind of scale it out. And then this way, it'll give a good roundness, smoothness to it. But then let's go back through and maybe scale this back down. So this is just personal preference for the size and shape of finger parts and whatnot. Okay, so now let's go back through and let's try to select all these polygons. I can do grow a couple times because I want that whole area. And I'm going to copy this over. So I can simply do that by keeping an edit poly. I don't want to make this a separate object. I just want to copy this over here like this. So I'll show you how I did that. All you have to do is hold down Shift when you're in the Move tool, or even Scale or Rotate, and then drag it over. So that clones a copy, and you can choose Yes Clone to Element. I don't want to clone to a new object. I want it to still be this part of the character. But now I can scale this down a little bit. This finger wouldn't nearly be that long. Let's rotate it just a little bit. And all I really have to do is just weld these, or target weld these to the correct angles. So let's go ahead and do that. Go into vertex mode, target weld, and let's start to weld up things. Might need to go into wireframe mode to see some of this. Couple more. Got one of the ones in the middle here, and that should be it. Okay, so there's always adjustments I can do. You know, some vertices that are kind of weird looking. That actually isn't too bad for the bottom of the knuckles. That would bevel out. But now I just really need a couple more loops to try to finish off the hand here. So loop, and let's try to pull one down the thumb, which might be nice. Add some more roundness to the thumb. But what I can do, is deselect those thumb areas, or thumb joints. And let's go back to constrain to edge, and let's move these down so that they are closer here. And that way I can add a little bit more roundness to the hand. Flatten off maybe the back of the hand a little more, but maybe even add a little bit more roundness here. It's going to be an easy way. We still have quads for everything. This area could actually have a little bit more detail to it. Perhaps, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. What I could do is add a loop through here, but I think that's at least a good start to add some detail. Okay, so now with the foot's really the same thing. So I'm going to extrude things out. Maybe I'll extrude out one toe and then copy it over. So I don't really have kind of a back toe like some animals would have, or a claw. It's just 3 claws in the front. So then I can actually copy the same things over here to this one as well. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat the same process here. I do, need some more loops throughout the body before I really do a whole lot more detail. So before I do that with the foot, let's go ahead and adjust the crotch area with another loop, because this triangle is going to be very difficult to move or animate. So what I'm going to do is actually just do a loop very close to the center, which will allow me to add some more detail all the way up to the top of the head. But what I'm going to do is delete the edges on the legs. And even if it goes back to the back side, that's fine. But what I want to do is not deselect that. I want to deselect the top of the body so that I can delete the edges on the legs. Because I want to connect it down throughout the crotch, not down, not down the legs. So what we're going to do is deselect all of these. That one. These up here. So just the legs we're deleting. So we're keeping the loops all the way around except for that. Hit G to turn off the grid to get that out of the way. Okay, so let's hold down Control and remove to delete the edges and the vertices. Okay, so let's make adjustments to that crotch area. What I'm going to do is use the cut tool to create some loops here to kind of ease out what would have been these triangles, but now I'm going to create triangles and then I'm going to convert them into quads so that kind of rounds the surface off. So let me start with the front of the crotch. What I'm going to do is take this vertex and just move it down here. That is going to create a triangle, and then gone, but we'll come back and fix that. So I'm going to continue throughout the leg, pull this back, and then that's going to connect to this vertex, and then I'll come back and fix that. Let's do the same thing since this character does have back legs. Same concept here. I'm going to create triangles, and then I'm going to go back and fix that, which will allow me to give more rounded shape to the crotch area and actually better movement when we get to rigging and animation. Okay, so all I need to do next is actually get rid of the triangles by target welding. So I can target weld down, and that should give me quads on the side as well as quads on the top. So it's actually a pretty good way of doing that. Do the same thing here. Just do the quad down. There we go. Pretty good shape. And then this vertex will go down to this one. The front vertex will go down to this one. So that way I kind of give a better angle. And although it doesn't look that better, we can take this vertex and kind of move it up. And now it's not as rigid of a motion. Actually, let's turn off constrain for a second, and then now let's move things up. So we get more rounded forms. So the front of the body, actually we need to take the vertices and move them up because we want to have a kind of diagonal of where the loops are going to be. So let's pull these way up. You can always add some more loops here in a minute. And this will also make some other loops kind of move up as well, which is fine. That'll stay up there like that. Okay, so maybe even these loops can be pulled up as well. This one isn't going to be as drastic. What we are trying to do is trying to get a nice topology or the edge loops for when we're trying to animate. Okay, so let's go add some more edge loops here. So let's do swift loop, and let's maybe pull at least 2 more in here. We don't want to go too crazy, but at least 2 more. We can also put one above that. So maybe I'll go back and delete one. Let's take one of those out and just put one. But then we can also add one up here as well, which will actually make another loop down the back leg. But we'll actually probably use that with the 3 sections. So let's go back. So it actually does create 3 sections there for the back toes, which actually work perfectly. So but this setup is a better loop process for how that hip will rotate and bend. We want about 3 to 4 edge loops around each section. I can also come in here and pull that down some. Whoop, wrong one. This here. Start to round the what would be the butt area out a little bit, so it's not as rigid. Maybe I'm pulling these out to round these off a little more as well. And underneath the leg doesn't have to be pointed up. That's natural. Maybe even some of these edges can be pulled out some. Maybe not where the leg meets, but maybe like this vertex right there. So that these outer edges don't have to be so low, and it'll kind of round off that form a little bit. Already looking better. Let's pull this one down some. Kind of be careful with this one with being so low there, so let's kind of pull this up. Now this is becoming to be a non-planar surface, so maybe this one comes down and that one meets it a little bit better of a smooth surface. Whoop, that went way out of the way. There we go. Not too bad. We probably will want to add some more loops throughout the leg to kind of ease this surface a little bit. This point's kind of crazy there, that's okay. So we also kind of want to do the same thing for the leg as well. So this one will really be kind of up here more. And this would just be kind of repeating a lot of that same process. Let's go add some more loops. Maybe one might be the amount that's needed. Then I can adjust that shape pretty easily now. Making those surfaces aren't so pointed. Not too bad. So I continue to work on that some more. Maybe I will add another loop horizontally here that goes back to the butt area, just to round these shapes off a little more. The top, this doesn't have to be so close. Yeah, probably where the the shoulder blades can come in. These can kind of start to thin up where the shoulder blades and the back muscles and the spine kind of meet up. But down here, it can definitely be a little wider. You can always use the relax tool to relax those sections out. Okay, so now I can add another vertical loop that'll go all the way down to the leg now. So let's pull that all the way back. And that might break apart the back leg. See what that does there. So it adds another loop, but that's okay. We can always go back there and adjust that. So what we're going to try to do is be able to create the 3 sections in the front and also the 3 sections in the back. Okay, so also I can maybe even break the loop around a little bit. So let's we'll deal with the back leg here in a second. Okay, so let's go in here and try to break this front toe apart. Instead of adding another loop throughout the leg, what I can really do is maybe use the chamfer tool to chamfer just these edges out, and that will allow me to get 3 sections for the toes instead of just 2. What that is going to do, unfortunately, is create some triangles. So what I can possibly do is try to pull this back and maybe break it apart in the middle instead of right there where the toe is. So the bottom of the toe might be a nice area to do that with. So let's pull this one back to right there, and let's do the same thing here. And now we can go delete. These edges, hold down control. Maybe you can pull that one. And then let's create the triangle here. So triangles are okay, but we can also still go back and fix this so that it is more round there. So let's actually do the same thing back here. I don't have a lot of loops, but that's okay. There's that one going. Get that one going there, okay. But I'm going to come back and add some more loops for definition. And this will allow me to be able to break it apart so I can. Let's just start deleting these. So I can still have the toes, but then I can go back and fix this so there's no n-gons or triangles. Okay, so let's try to break this apart. Let's see, let's go back through. Okay, so let's start an edge here, and let's pull that around. So that should create a quad, all the way around. But that might create a triangle when we go back through. So let's do that. That should be alright. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this allows us to get another loop. Let's pull this one around there. So although this is going to be, an n-gon, or we can even just pull this through with a triangle, and create a smaller triangle right there. But that's an area that isn't going to deform too much, maybe other than around the ankle point of view. So that's at least not a bad start for right now. I can come back and kind of fix that one later. Okay, so let's talk about the toes. The toes will go the same way. So what we're going to probably do is speed this video up, create the toes, and then we might stop the video this time and then come back for a third part for the head to work on the facial features like in the source image here, and to kind of round off some of the shapes a little more, create some skin to clothing definition, and that'll be it. So this video will probably end after fixing the toes, and then we'll come back and kind of work on the face in the third part. Okay, so same set of processes with the toes. Extruding them out. These actually have claws on them. What I did was extrude one, copy it over, make it a little larger. Welded the vertices, copy the second one over to the last one, scaled it down, rotated it a little bit, and then welded those together. Then I used the relax tool to try to relax some of the hard edges throughout the body. I'll come back like the front of the knees a little bit. Too hard edge there. So I can select some of these polygons, and let's try that relax tool there, and just try to ease off those edges a little bit so they're not just so hard. So that's pretty good. Let's do that for the entire back side as well. And that will space apart your edges and whatnot, but it definitely rounds things off a little bit. So that's definitely a good tool to use, and I've used that for the back legs as well. Probably need to come up here to that area is not too bad, but let's select the whole knee area, relax that a little bit. See what happens when I relax this next ring. So it keeps things more round instead of very rigid. Okay, so then what I did was copy all three of those toes to the back and then welded those together. Made some adjustments like the size and shape, so the front and back feet are a little different, but they're still pretty close to being the same thing. Main idea, any areas that you have joints, knees, ankles, fingers, you need to have more loops around those areas. Okay, so that'll be it for this video. The last video in this modeling series, at least, will be finishing the head, using the smoothing groups, and kind of finalizing the model before we move into UV mapping.